Thank you. All right. We might get stuck into it. So firstly, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. My name's Julie Petty. I'm the General Manager for Policy and Projects within Seafood Industry Australia. I'd like to note this event is being recorded. We're going to record the presentation element of it, but not the Q&A. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'm joining you all from Yugara land, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as emerging leaders. Why are we here today? So the Australian Government is partway through their review of the 8 Australian marine park management plans. 2 parks have already been reviewed, including the Southeast and an expansion of the Macquarie Island Marine Park. At the end of July, though, the Australian Government announced the commencement of public consultation on the proposed changes to further marine park areas, including Lord Howe and Norfolk. In addition to that, a number of independent park evaluation plans have been released, which will inform or help inform the next iteration of management plans. Consultation for all of those is open presently and will close on the 30th of September. Today is all about giving you, as industry members and parties potentially impacted by these changes, information about how this process is running and what it looks like. We've got a slight change to the run sheet for the webinar, as we're very lucky to have Sean Barclay, Branch Head of Marine and Island Parks, kindly agreed to provide us with an overview of the entire MPA review process itself, including timeframes, and an overview of the items out for consultation now, including a walkthrough of the proposed changes to Norfolk, Lord Howe and Guildford. After Sean's presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A. And then at that point, we're going to kindly ask non-industry attendees to depart the meeting while we have a close discussion. I ask for this respectfully because this is a highly emotive topic involving people's livelihoods, and we really like industry members to have the opportunity to be able to speak freely and talk about how this potentially might impact them. So we'd appreciate your cooperation when we reach that part of the meeting. Connie, you still have your hand up. Are you okay? Oh, good. Fabulous. All right, so what we might do at this point is we'll throw across to you, Sean, if you'd like to start sharing screen. And what we'll do is we'll hold off questions to the end of Sean's presentation, if that's all right with everyone. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Julie. Can you see that okay and hear me all right? Great.
Perfect.
Cool. So thanks for the invitation to be here today. I'd like to add my acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of everywhere people are joining from today. So my presentation is intended to provide an update on the review process, recap the directions that have already been set, and walk through what we heard through an independent evaluation that's been undertaken of our current set of management plans, and discuss the consultation on new management plans and proposed marine park expansions. So to recap the overall direction for the review, the Australian Government has committed to protecting at least 30% of Australia's ocean in highly protected areas by 2030. We're currently at 24%, which is around 2.2 million square kilometres, meaning an additional 523,980 square kilometres is needed to meet the 30% target. The process is also considering how to limit intensive activities where feasible, and we'll be focusing on the Temperate East Network and the Coral Sea Marine Park management plans if prioritisation becomes necessary. I'll come back to that in a second. A key point is that stakeholder engagement is absolutely crucial to this process. So that includes First Nations participation, peak bodies, our advisory committees, the fishing sector, as well as other marine park users. And we really welcome your advice today on other opportunities to support sectoral engagement and make sure the review is informed by practical place-based knowledge. So in terms of the overall process, the the independent evaluation of our 2018 management plans has been completed. These are available on our website, and I'll talk more about the findings of that in a minute. We're currently at step 2 of this process, which is where public consultation on expansion proposals and the proposal to draft new management plans is currently open. The next stage is consultation on draft management plans, which is then followed by finalisation, ministerial approval, and the tabling of those management plans in both Houses of Parliament. So just as I guess a reminder for those that aren't as familiar with the extent of marine protected areas in Australia, and to show which parts are within scope of this current work. So this slide shows the broader national representative system of marine protected areas. At present, around 52% of Australia's ocean, or 4.6 million square kilometres, is protected by Commonwealth, state and territory marine protected areas. As mentioned before, within that, about 24% is in highly protected zoning. The 60 Australian marine parks managed by Parks Australia, so the bit that we're responsible for, make up the overwhelming majority of the total protected area estate. The current review of management plans that covers 44 marine parks is the primary opportunity to progress towards the 30% highly protected target. So there's 5 Australian Marine Park Management Plans expiring in 2028, and we are working to complete all of these plans before their expiry. They cover the Northwest, Southwest, Temperate East networks and the Coral Sea Marine Park. There is a new management plan, standalone management plan proposed for Norfolk Marine Park, following community interest in a separate plan, so separating that out from the Temperate East. So that means there's a proposal to develop 6 new management plans in total. Like I said, we're working to get through all of these plans before their expiry, but if needed, the Temperate East network and the Coral Sea management plans are our priorities. The first stage of public consultation opened on 31 July and closes on 30 September. Consultation is not just on the highly protected target, but also what's working well, what could be improved, which areas should be priorities for high protection and why, and what activities should be considered in the management planning process. So feedback into this stage is a really important opportunity to shape the direction of draft plans before more detailed zoning and management arrangements are developed. I mentioned an independent evaluation that's been undertaken so far. So we undertook this evaluation to look at how the current set of management plans have been implemented. This was undertaken by Arima Research and included desktop analysis and interviews to assess the effectiveness of implementation. So in total, 195 stakeholders and First Nations people participated in the evaluation. Overall, it found that Parks Australia has made positive progress. Key strengths included partnerships and collaboration in management, effective use of innovative technologies, ecological baseline data collection, effective assessment, authorisation and compliance activities, and the development of frameworks, strategies and policies to guide our management. Of course, there are areas for improvement. This included improving our engagement with traditional owners and First Nations partners, addressing data gaps, balancing ecological, social and economic values, and reviewing the effectiveness of our advisory committees, as well as improving communication on around marine parks and our work with the broader community. As mentioned, so these findings are really relevant to what happens with the next set of management plans, and I guess I'd encourage stakeholders to have a look at the evaluation material before considering a submission to the consultation process, because it provides a really useful evidence base for what needs to be carried forward and what needs to change. So this slide introduces the proclamation proposals for Lord Howe and Norfolk Marine Parks. The proclamation proposals are required where boundary changes or new parks are proposed, and they require at least 60 days of public consultation. So these proclamation proposals need to contain maps and the key reasoning behind the proposed proclamations. Following consultation, the Director of National Parks prepares a report on feedback that we've got through the consultation process. The Minister then considers and approves the final proposals. So together, the Lord Howe and Norfolk expansions would add 671,500 square kilometres high protection, which would take Australia from the existing 24% to around 31.7%. That said, the review work will continue to identify key areas across the remaining network that may be candidates for higher protection as well. So the proposal for Lord Howe would significantly increase the park to the north and to the east of the existing park, increasing the overall area from 110,000 square kilometres to 406,000. As mentioned, it'll also add 308,000 square kilometres of high protection, which is 3.5% of the 6% target that we need. The rationale for this proposal is to strengthen the full spectrum of protections for the full spectrum of marine communities in the deep sea plateaus of the Lord Howe Rise, and improving ecological connectivity between the Coral Sea and the Tasman Sea. The proposal also supports climate resilience and ecosystem adaptation, and is designed to balance local use with conservation. There is more detail on that available in the proclamation proposal on our website, so I won't get into detail on that now. For the consultation process that's underway, we're particularly interested in feedback on the proposed boundary, the rationale for increased protection, and any practical considerations from marine park users on that expanded area. Norfolk is kind of similar. The proposal would expand the marine park to the outer limits of the exclusive economic zone around Norfolk. So this would increase from 188,000 square kilometres to 430,000 square kilometres, and would add around 363,500 square kilometres in high protection, which is around 4.1% of that target. So under this proposal, around 94% of the park would be national park zone, so green zone, with the remaining 6% a special purpose zone for Norfolk. Rationale is to strengthen protection for the Norfolk Island bioregion, which is a unique tropical to temperate transition area. The Norfolk Ridge is a major ecological corridor linking New Caledonia and New Zealand, which supports connectivity for whales, seabirds, sharks, turtles, and other listed species. The area is a biological important area for a range of seabird species. And again, the sort of details of the benefits of the rationale in the proclamation proposal. So as with Lord Howe, it's intended to manage existing and potential pressures, build climate resilience, support ecosystem adaptation, and balance conservation with sustainable use. So again, welcome feedback on the impacts and the boundaries of the proposed expansion. So this is my final slide, and probably the one of main interest here. So this whole exercise is being undertaken to find a balance between sustainable use and environmental outcomes, and we will be aiming to minimise the impacts of changes on marine park users. So in developing revised zoning, we'll work with regulators, marine industry, and stakeholders to understand the impacts of proposed changes. So this includes all marine users. So we're working with a range of industries, including commercial and rec fishing, offshore oil and gas, tourism, dive industries, the carbon capture and storage industry, offshore wind, shipping, space industries, and others. For the most part, it's too early to understand the potential impacts of future zoning outside the Lord Howe and Norfolk Island proposals, because we haven't reached a conclusion for the broader network yet. And we welcome feedback from marine park users on how to strike the balance we are hoping to achieve in developing new management plans. For Lord Howe and Norfolk extensions, we acknowledge there are some impacts, particularly on commercial fishing interests in eastern tuna and billfish fishery and the east coast deepwater trawl sector of the southern and eastern scale fish and shark fishery. So in general terms, to understand the impact of our proposals on commercial fishing, we take advice on the proposed zoning through catch analysis by ABARES and in consultation with fisheries management agencies and industry. Historically, governments have adopted a position of providing financial support to commercial fishing interests that are adversely impacted by changes in marine park zoning. In anticipation that there will be some level of impact on the fishing industry from this work, a notional $7 million has been set aside for assistance measures in 28-29. Now, I say this is a notional figure as we don't yet have the final zoning design, and we have committed to working with industry on the structure of assistance measures, and we're currently preparing materials for consultation with fisheries management agencies and SIA to gather industry feedback on this later in the calendar year. But I will add that funding beyond that $7 million is subject to further decisions of governments, but we are committed to working with industry to scope what those measures might look like. One final point is that we really do value your opinion, and the only sector that we're resourcing to provide feedback into this process is through SIA, which I think should be a really good indication that we want to hear your views, and we really welcome feedback either through SIA or directly through Parks Australia on the practical consideration for industry and on the design of assistance measures. That's all I had, Chair. So thanks everyone for your time, and welcome to have a few questions now before we leave you to your deliberations. So, Julie.
Thank you, Sean. Would you mind?
I'm sharing, yeah.
Yeah, then we can see people. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
So please stick your hand up if you have a question. You're also welcome to use the chat function and I can read those questions out. We will, after Sean departs, have a discussion around that component of the SIA consultation process and explain that in a little bit more detail and how you guys can participate and how we're anticipating that will run. So, okay, so Simon. Oh.
Hello, and I'm sorry, I haven't got my. Can people hear me? I haven't got my camera on. I'm sorry because I'm sitting in the car. I'm not driving.
No, that's all right. We figured you were the hairdresser.
Watt's office. No, I'm not in the hairdresser. No. Minister Watt's office has told us twice that there is no $7 million cap. In one exchange in the last few days, they described that as a miscommunication. That figure is very concerning for us, given the scale of tuna fishing that appears to be going on out there, and the 1,000-ton Alfonsino quota that would be extinguished, I guess, by the Lord Howe Rise extension proposal. Have you guys got any comment on that, or could you sort of just explain more? Certainly the forums that the fishing industry are working on just lit up as you put that slide up.
Yes. No. So when I said it's notional, it's in the forward estimates, but we can't predict how much is there because we haven't done the design work on the network and we haven't sort of had a discussion with industry on how the assistance packages would be structured. So, you know how governments work. There isn't a buck of money in the future years because we need to do that design work first. So the discussions with the minister would be around, you know, he would need to go and work with his colleagues and securing additional funding down the track. They're all decisions of government. So.
I think that speaks to, so there's a question in the chat around how the compensation is to be calculated. It sounds from your answer there, Sean, that is to be determined.
Yeah, so there is sort of precedence in how we undertook this work in both 2019 when the current plans came into effect and through the Southeast network that came into effect last year. So that's the model that we have been using to date. But we've committed to consult with industry on whether that's still fit for purpose, and that's what we'll be chatting to SIA on going forward.
Thank you. Whilst people have a think, and whether or not you want to pop your hands up if you've got any other questions, when we've been going through all of the independent evaluations, Sean, as a part of this process, what were the standouts for you when reviewing some of those evaluation plans? Any surprises from your perspective, or things that you hoping to see improvement in?
So I think the strengths are around our partnerships in management marine parks. You know, we're not an agency that has lots of vessels and those types of things. So we manage the marine parks through you know, grant programs and direct procurement arrangements, and that with a range of different organisations. So I think that's been a really positive. We have a lot more information from the investments we've made in science on what's in the marine parks and what are the key values over those 10 years. And that's something that will inform the next set of management plans as well. I think we've made a range of good improvements and around our regulatory systems and authorisations and compliance, and how that's working to sort of encourage good practices in marine parks. As I mentioned, areas for improvement. It runs a bit on the smell of an oily rag, some of this stuff. So there's only so much we can do, but I think we've sort of identified some areas that we would perhaps prioritise for investment around First Nations participation in marine park management and those kind of things. So.
How do you, when I was reading through particularly the evaluations for the Northern component, and overarchingly across all of the evaluations, commercial fishing was rated as highly compliant, I think it's fair to say. But in the Northern parks, there was a note that one of the primary points of pressure is coming from unregulated illegal fishing from overseas entities. Changing the park zones and the regulation, I guess, is not necessarily this industry is highly compliant as per the evaluation reports. They are not. How is that going to be managed? That will continue to be an ongoing pressure point.
Look, it will, and from an Australian Marine Parks perspective, we work pretty closely with the border protection agencies and AFMA and in managing IUU fishing. So we try and work with them to prioritise the illegal exploitation of natural resources from marine parks as somewhere that they would target their surveillance and activities on. It is a very broad issue, and I guess the Australian government's going to some lengths to try and reduce the impact of IUU fishing in the north. So there's a whole range of measures around that, including working with our partnership agencies and neighbouring countries as well to reduce those impacts.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to keep holding the microphone until someone else puts their hand up. So I also noted that when you're talking about pressure points, particularly around the Norfolk scenario and what is causing challenges there, a lot of it was it appeared to be around terrestrial runoff, so septic tank leakage, stuff like that. I was trying to sort of look at, you know, those kinds of pressure points versus the changes you're looking to make and marry the two in terms of how that will help mitigate impact. And I guess I would like, I couldn't quite see how those things would necessarily linkage. So is the new management plan going to include a stronger focus on terrestrial impacts as well?
So for Norfolk in particular, in terms of separating that out from the Temperate East plan, we would hope to co-design a new management plan with the Norfolk community that addresses all of those kind of land-based issues, and we try and work with the Norfolk Island community to reduce the impacts of land-based runoff and other things on marine park values, if that makes sense. So it's very much a proclamation proposal at this point. So the management plan will be the next step. So that has a bit of a while to go on it. So, yeah.
All right, now the question lines are hotting up. So we've got a few in the chat and 2 on screen. So Susie, I'll jump to you first and we'll alternate, I think, a little bit.
Thanks, JP. Yes, having a look at the papers, there's obviously a huge increase in highly protected areas in both Lord Howe and Norfolk.
Yes.
And the figures in the paper, especially on the Lord Howe paper, jump around a bit. But like, how are you? There doesn't seem to be any real justification or methodology in the papers for how you've arrived at the new percentages and how that's appropriate in terms of level of protection. And I guess I'm asking because I think it sets a bit of a precedent that for the future 5, if you think suddenly a region has to go from 20% protected to 80%, you need to explain why, I think, and justify that may not be the case for all features that need to be protected, if you know what I mean.
So, you know, this whole process is using a legislative process to achieve a policy outcome. So does that? So the
30 by 30. Yes.
Yeah. So to reach the 30% target, that's what we're trying to do. I guess we need to find somewhere to put that. And those are the candidate areas that we're proposing here are around, like, there are some really good environmental values there in terms of Lord Howe Rise, connectivity, etc., that I'm hoping are well explained in the proclamation proposal. If they're not, we can value your feedback on that. So it is just a proposal. So that's why we're putting it out there for consultation, and we want to hear people's views on it. So. Julie, mute.
Yeah, no, that would help if I unmuted myself. Good job. First cutting to me today. All right, so a couple of questions that we have in the chat. Sean, your first slide indicated limit intensive activities where possible. Yes. What does that mean?
If we look back to the Southeast process, there were certain sorts of intensive activities that were, I guess, considered less compatible with marine park objectives. These were things like offshore wind, intensive aquaculture, and so on. So around the broader network, we'll be taking a look at those sorts of activities and looking to remove them where feasible. So in some areas, for example, there are a range of oil and gas entitlements that exist in marine parks that'd be really difficult to extinguish. That may not be feasible. So we're doing that analysis, and again, that's something that we're looking for people's feedback on through this process. We've got the directions. This is a consultation exercise on our notice of intent. What should we consider as a part of that? So,
thank you. The contribution from each zone to high protection is that there's a question around that. So is the 30 by 30 a total target or a bioregional target? Do you have specific targets within different environment types or?
So it's all about comprehensiveness, adequateness, and representativeness, how many people will know. So there's the goals and principles of the National Representative System of Marine Protected Areas. So there's a policy document that guides this. It is just a guide, and there are compromises that we need to make around minimising the social and economic impacts of marine parks. So we are striving for the best comprehensive, adequate, representative network they can get, while also considering all those other impacts. So, not impacts, sorry, other considerations in network design.
A question following on from Susie's point from Matt. So I've seen a shift in narrative in the media from some within the Marine Park Dialogue who have shifted their stance, and they're now stating that just 9% of mainland Australian waters are highly protected. Does the government's commitment of 30% of high protection continue to include a major remote offshore island territory? So I think the premise of the question there is around, are we predominantly looking at offshore remote, or are you also going to be looking probably more within state waters by the sounds of that question?
So it wouldn't be in state waters because we're only talking about Australian marine parks that are in Commonwealth waters.
Mhm.
You know, there is some commentary around improving those sort of on-shelf protections around the country, but we have to factor in that, you know, those areas are more highly utilised, and there are a range of other impacts there that we kind of have to factor into network design. So ideal world, yes, but you know, in practice, it's difficult to manage all the different sort of uses of marine parks around the country that we need to consider. So.
Thank you. Do you have any insights as to the phased rollout? So we're looking at like which parks are we, and in what sequence are we looking at?
So the notice, the notice of intent that's open at the moment is for all of the marine parks.
Yep.
So we're looking for feedback there. They all expire at the same time, so in 2028, and we're looking to try and get through as many as we can in the time that we have available.
Yeah.
If needed, we would prioritise the Temperate East and the Coral Sea, so the Temperate East Network and the Coral Sea Marine Park plans. But we're going to be doing our best to try and get through what we can in the time we have available. So, you know, the timeline from here, so consultation is open until the end of September on the notice of intent. We then take into account all of that feedback. We don't just rely on the statutory processes. We will indeed talk to, you know, different sectors outside of that as well to gather everyone's views, and that informs the development of draft management plans that we would hope to have out in sort of 10 months or so. And again, that's another process of statutory consultation that we would hope to, you know, we'll undertake then. Try and aim to get them finalised by 2028 before they lapse.
Thank you. David Gobelman, you've got a question.
Yeah, thanks, JP. G'day, Sean and everyone.
Hi, David.
Is there a definition of, you might have covered it, maybe I was dreaming, but intensive activities? I mean, is bottom trawling, for example, considered an intensive activity? I'd really like to know what is a definition of an intensive activity and who decides what that definition is, because I'm getting really nervous here in relation to whether the consultation is going to be a popularity contest or whether it's going to be based on fact and data. For example, you know, we had the Greenpeace publication report last week published,
Yes.
and all of a sudden it's on the minister's LinkedIn page as being, look at that. I mean, I'm as nervous as hell, to be quite frank, about this whole process, and you're not giving me any comfort. So I'm sure there's other people in this meeting who have the same feeling or aren't prepared to say it, but I'm going to put it out there. If it's a popularity contest, we might as well go home. So what assurances have we got that the department is going to consider the people, you know, the food security, and why don't we have a food production zone, for example, in a marine park? I mean, we've just got to look at this differently, and this whole concept of wanting to just lock up marine parks and don't care about what the impact is. I mean, development fisheries, for example. I mean, you're looking at historical, but I've got a member who spent millions of dollars trying to develop a fishery. His catch history is going to be very little, and based on a formula, he's going to get probably nothing. I mean, what comfort can we provide people? Yeah.
Okay, we'll pass back to Sean and then we'll jump to Rob.
No worries. So there is no extensive, you know, exhaustive list of intensive activities. If I go back to that Southeast example, it's things, you know, intensive aquaculture, offshore wind, oil and gas. Bottom trawl was also not an activity that's undertaken in the Southeast. But again, this is one of those things that we're looking for feedback on. It's a notice of intent to develop new plans. The general directions are out there, so we're kind of after views on it. It's not a popularity competition. So yes, we take all comments from submissions into consideration. And yes, our reporting does specify the number of unique and campaign submissions. But I'll go back to the point again that, you know, we really do value your opinion, and that this is the only industry that we are financially supporting to provide feedback is, the fishing and seafood industry. So I think that should be a pretty good signal that we are genuinely interested in your views.
Thank you. We have only a few minutes left with Sean. So Rob, we might pass to you as being probably the last question to Sean.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Rob.
Mine's just a clarity on the policy issue. Like you stated, it's a policy issue that we're trying to implement. The policy that we've been implementing to date is this headline 30% number,
Yes.
which Minister Watt announced, which is clearly a domestic policy because it doesn't fit in with Target 3. So I just want to check my understanding. We've used that domestic policy to declare the vast zones in our external territories, which are very difficult to assess against our golden principles. And now we get into the mainland, we will look to our international commitments, which are a CAR principles, 30% fully protected.
So the goals and principles of the NRS MPA is a domestic agreement that all states and territories in the Commonwealth have agreed to.
Yep.
That's the guiding policy document that we're working with.
Yeah, but that's, you can assess against that thing quite easily. If we look against the program since we signed up to the High Ambition groups, we've literally circled every single external territory and gotten full protection. Like, it's not consistent with that. We have said, well, that's because we've got this other policy, which is a 30% target level full protection, which is a domestic policy. There's nothing in 30 by 30 that says headline figure 30%. So we're now getting to the mainland. So I guess I'm looking at two things here: is how on earth is what we're doing at Lord Howe and Norfolk consistent with our guides, goals and principles? And then once we step back onto the mainland for the plans, are we then dropping into an international policy?
No, so I guess I'd still, I think that the goals and principles of the NRS MPA are our guiding policy document domestically. So,
that's for establishing parks, not for reviewing the management plans.
So the management plans are designed to contribute to that. So, and this is the whole notice of intent process.
It is for establishing, because once we get to zoning, it's very explicit. It needs to be done early in the process, which is as the parks. Then I think where I'm getting to is if we've got a 30 by 30 program on land under CAR principles, that is a different purpose for the mainland parks. So what would be the trigger for them to be proclamations as opposed to a change in a management plan?
A change, so a proclamation is triggered by a new parks being created or modification of the boundaries.
So actually a new park, because there's a list of things that the director can consider and administer in developing a management plan. One of them is the original purpose of the plans and the director's original, documentation to the minister, and effectively managing the plans under their original purpose. So we didn't just proclaim these things and forget about those categories. These parks were proclaimed as multiple use. If we're going to change that purpose for a park, do we need to proclaim new parks, or will you just try and do that underneath the management plan process?
So I'd need to get legal advice on how, if we're changing the zoning arrangements extensively within an existing park, whether that triggers a proclamation arrangement. I can't answer that. Typically, the proclamation process, as I understand it, is around declaring new parks and modifying boundaries. So
it's explicitly zoning, and what the minister can consider in plans, because they are management plans that we're reviewing, not the actual parks. We actually go back to 351 reports. We're supposed to be almost at this stage, this consultation on what's going to be in a plan. It's limited to about 5 or 6 titles, and I think the public should know that too.
So I think it's broader than that, because it also goes to our management arrangements, how we manage those parks, what are our partnership arrangements, what are the regulatory settings of stuff that's in each of those zones. So,
okay, we might draw this one to a close, if that's right. So just wanted to say thank you, Sean, for taking the time to come and present today and answer the questions direct from industry. That's very much appreciated for you to do so. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, what we're going to do is now transition to an industry-only session, but that does include, obviously, industry records, etc. As well. So you guys, please do stay online. But thank you very much to Sean, Alan as well, and others on your team who might have joined us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for the invitation again. Yeah, leave you to it. All right. Cheers. Bye.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, I'll just reiterate. Just having a look, industry only session. So if you are not a commercial party invested in the industry, we'd ask you to jump off, please. Okay, what we will do now is move across to a bit of an update about, I guess, thoughts on that session. Before we jump directly into that, though, I'm going to ask John Ackerman, CEO of Seafood Industry Australia, to provide a bit of a rundown on our role in this process, position, the committee that has been set up, and an update on the most recent engagement with Minister Watt, where we had a meeting with him on Wednesday. So across to you, John. Is your audio working, John? No, it is not. I did mention to John earlier he was probably going to have to rely on interpretive dance. What about now?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Off we go.
All right, I've had to change systems just to give people confirmation.
No, you got again now.
Have I still
Oh,
can't hear me?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Technology, gotta love it. First of all, thanks very much, Julie. And look, I want to make a couple of, I suppose, key comments to people around our role, the committee, and the discussion with the Minister and the Department earlier this week at a very high level. But first, look, I do want to thank Julie in particular and the team that is working with our committee, because obviously the announcement around this Marine Park review fell on the back of, what was it, 12 hours following the end of seafood directions. So we've moved from one thing to another. And I want to give confidence to the industry itself that we are particularly focused on this as a significant priority. And that in itself has been supported by our board specifically. But also want to outline that we do view this as a marathon, not necessarily as a single consultation process leading up to just to the 30th of September. This is going to go on through this month, this year and next year. Additionally, I want to outline there's certainly a lot of noise around the marine park aspect. We can expect to see a lot of press, environmental NGOs putting forward their points of view. And we at SIA here have certainly made a deliberate decision at this point not to react to that. We want to remain focused and strategic on what we need to do. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that we're remaining silent or inactive, just that we want to concentrate our efforts specifically where they can influence the process and deliver outcomes that are going to be beneficial to industry. Now, I think we clearly have heard and we know very well government's commitment to achieving at least 30% highly protected marine areas is clear. So our immediate focus is on influencing how that's implemented and minimising its impact. And that means, from our perspective and working with those over the last few weeks, seeking how they're actually going to put the structural adjustment policy formula and timing together, and making sure that we've got significant input into that, understanding and minimising the impacts to industry itself, certainly seeking flexibility around the boundaries and the zoning, ensuring fisheries management is, importantly, it's recognised. And of course, key long-term outcome in all of this as well is ensuring we're securing that greater certainty for industry through this review, but also beyond it. And that's where the work of Blue Economy, CRC, etc., and the futures of seafood and the seafood guarantee will start to really come into its own. Now, I think it's been outlined in some of the questions, and we can and certainly in some aspects we've seen that we can expect this debate to continue beyond 30% itself. And I think it's going to be important that we be prepared for increased representation across bioregions and connectivity corridors. They're aspects I have heard being put forward at this point in time. Therefore, the longer term policy position in itself beyond achieving 30% remains extremely important and will require that continued engagement and effort. And that's why I think our broader policy work really matters. Again, Futures of Seafood Roadmap, ultimately the seafood guarantee, so we can get recognition of Australia's seafood industry as that food security infrastructure, recognition that we're sustainable, comprehensively managed, that there is separation between fisheries management, marine park policy, and start giving some confidence and certainty back to industry itself. And looking to bring about a stop to the continual erosion of access without any evidence or demonstration of threats and risks itself. I think, and I've heard other people talk about this before, and it's something that we will look to push forward as well. An MPA over an already sustainable fishery doesn't make a fishery more sustainable. I think that's going to be important as we move forward. To come to the role of SIA itself and the advisory committee, I want to be particularly clear about this, specifically because of the funding being provided by DQ at this, and it is to ensure first and foremost that industry is being informed and consulted, and that our positions are provided to DQ throughout this whole process in the immediate bit, but in the longer term. But just as importantly, this process is to ensure that government doesn't leave anybody behind. Some aspects I saw earlier through this year seem to view DQ were asking a lot about who they should engage. I think that provides the opportunity to leave people behind, so we don't want to do that. So our role in this really is to help everyone understand the proclamation and the management plan processes, analyse the proposals and evidence that's behind them, and that has been a significant focus of the team over the last couple of weeks, particularly around those independent reviews and what they say. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time today to hear from the team itself to provide their points on that. It is definitely about providing the platform for industry's evidence and impact and making sure that we get that forward. But also want to emphasise it's as much about supporting fisheries and organisations prepare their own submissions and making sure that we are coordinating the key national messaging so that we are strengthening rather than weakening individual positions. The committee itself is there to provide advice and pathways for us, and it certainly doesn't replace the voice of affected fisheries sectors or associations. As I noted, we've been heavily focused on the evaluation material to date. There's a lot of paperwork that came out a couple of weeks ago, and again, hopefully we'll have time to go into that. But we do want to hear from everybody. If there are impacts that are not visible in the available data, please reach out to us. Julie is going to be running a process of actual one-on-one, and we will continue our information processes out to industry, plus looking for opportunities to engage, establish webinars, seek people's input. And in all of this as well, Blue Economy CRC will be fundamental to ensuring our positions are evidence-based, and this is something rather we will keep coming back to. And we will hear from Anne shortly on that. I should also be clear, we will be working with recreational fishing representatives and looking for alignment where our interests and messages coincide and we can actually add weight and benefit to it. Our objective in all of this is making sure we're putting comprehensive facts, evidence, and clearly demonstrating the impacts. And importantly, everyone's being heard. Again, this is as much a marathon as it is a sprint, so that engagement itself for us is not going to stop on the 30th of September. It will continue throughout this year, all the way up to the end of 2027. And whilst we do hear of this all needing to be in place by 2028, or certainly the priority areas, I think we want to be in a solid position before the end of 2027. Quickly, as noted on Wednesday this week, myself, Julie as SIA representatives and our chair, plus also CFA, Dan Casement, and our research partners, Blue Economy, met with DQ, then Minister Watt. I think it was a constructive discussion at this point in time. We did not go there to discuss the merits or downfalls of 30 by 30. I think we know the Minister's position on that is clear. Our central focus in itself was to better understand the process and, importantly, to start the discussion around structural adjustment, the policy, the formula, timing, and making sure that that is put on the table or provided to us so that we can work with DQ and the Minister's office early enough for industry to assess the proposals properly and the impacts itself of the boundary. And as you heard from Sean, we have been told it will be provided. I continue to emphasise it is a priority sooner rather than later. The assessment of impacts and appropriate adjustment response obviously still being worked through, but on top of that, we are also seeking the flexibility around the boundaries and the zoning to avoid, reduce, or importantly, minimise impacts. As a key point, we are looking to provide proper assessment and evidence around the cumulative social and economic impacts, so not just direct impacts to fishing itself, but flow-on effects through the value chain and to communities. And we have asked for a broader overview of full set of data. And of course, we are starting and pushing for recognition around existing fisheries legislation, management and accreditation, and importantly, getting government recognition of Australia's fisheries management framework, particularly where we are starting to see public claims that don't reflect that or start to use emotive language. And again, coming back to the seafood guarantee within the roadmap and the futures of seafood, making sure we are continuing to advocate that so that we can start to give industry some longer term confidence. In short, the message I want to leave you with, really, we are engaged. We have a strategy in place. We're focused on the points where we can make a difference. We will start to look to push out messaging around the positive aspects of our fisheries within Australia itself. But importantly and key to all of this, for us to be able to help you on this, we do need industry's knowledge and evidence, your stories, your experience. The stronger and the more coordinated that evidence is that we've got on this, of course, the stronger our influence to be able to work with government, but also to influence the boundaries, the zoning adjustment arrangements, and of course the policy settings that might flow into this in itself.